Sup nerds, I'm Tom. I'm going to talk to y'all about the Ignorance is Bliss expansion for Euphoria by Stonemaier Games. Just to let you guys know first, obviously I'm not going to talk to y'all about my thoughts on the base game of Euphoria. I'm just going to talk about the expansion. We do have an Our Thoughts video for the base game of Euphoria on our channel. You can go check that out. It's a bit of an older video, so we were in a different studio. The quality's a little bit lower. I was a little bit less fat. Things are different. Probably the biggest thing y'all should know about this expansion is there's kind of a lot of little things in here, not necessarily like new mechanics. It doesn't add like a lot of complexity and a second board to the game or anything like that. The best example actually that I can give is if you've ever played Viticulture, which is another one of Jamie's games. There are two different expansions that are just like decks of cards that replace the decks of cards that you play with in Viticulture. It's Visit from the Rhine Valley and the More Visitors expansion. Both of those are decks of cards that completely replace, you don't add to, or maybe in More Visitors you can add some. I've only played the Visit from the Rhine Valley expansion. But the idea is you completely replace the deck that you normally use in the base game. And that's what this does here. For the recruits and for the construction sites, I think they're called, they have two new decks that are completely new. You don't mix them in with the old ones. You play, you either choose to play with the base game ones or with these. And that's the biggest thing that this expansion includes for the game. Now there are, and I was thinking, at first I said, well, this could have been a smaller box, right? This could have been just those two decks, right? Or the deck of cards and the stack of tokens. But I felt like they went the extra mile with this a little bit to add a couple extra little things here and there just to beef up the game, and almost like, there are some things that they wanted to add to the game, but they didn't want to like print a second edition or something. They didn't want to reprint the game, and now I bought you and I both bought Euphoria. You bought it a long time ago, and I bought the new version, and it has all this better stuff in it. They didn't want to print a second edition where people who own the base game, were thinking, well, I don't really want to buy the second edition because it's not that different. Things like they added stickers to the board for balance of player count for these tunnels here, so that the minor meeple will start up a little bit higher or lower. Well, it'll start a little bit higher if you're playing with a lower player count, just to kind of balance it there. They added, they give you some player boards so that you can kind of organize your stuff here a little bit, which is nice. They gave you some 5 times tokens, bigger tokens for not for all the resources. I think just the commodities, the stuff that the stuff you're going to be getting more of. What are these? Like the peaches and the water and the bliss and the lightning. They also added, and this is kind of a new mechanic here, they added this board here, the market board, I think it's called. So when you're drawing these artifact cards, now you can choose, or you have to choose. I don't think you can take from the deck anymore. I think your only option is either to take the one that's free or pay to take one of the ones on the line, which is good because when you're just drawing from the deck, it's really random. And especially in Euphoria, you're trying to get sets. You're trying to get pairs of cards at least. So it's good that you have a little bit more control over that. Yeah, maybe, spending 2 commodities to get a card, it's kind of a lot, but hey, you'll get the 2 cards that you need, so you can go ahead and, complete something for the 2 matching instead of 3 different ones. The other thing that it adds, and it's the one thing that I think is going to be good for a lot of people, but I can't really comment on because I never used, is they add Automa, so a solo play. So I guess there was no solo play in the game originally, and now you can play against, an AI character. And I think there's actually a 2-player variant that adds an AI character, so it's not just, a cutthroat of 2 people playing against each other, that there is a third character doing stuff. Which, again, it's great. I'm glad that there's an option so that other people, if they want to play solo and stuff, or they, they want to have a more challenging 2-player game. I tend to not do that. I definitely don't do solo. I've never done a solo game. And I don't know, adding honestly, I don't know if I would play this game at 2 players. Maybe the Automa fixes that, but even I played with like 3 players recently, and I feel like this game you want a lot. You really want like 5 or 6 players in this game. I said there's no like new mechanics in the game. And while that's kind of true, one could argue that the market board here, that's a bit of a new mechanic. Kind of true. And there's also, though, in the recruits, there are factionless recruits now. So that is a new thing. So I guess maybe I lied when I said there's no new mechanic. And what they are is they're pretty much, you're going to either get it in your starting hand, or if you draw it later through your ethical dilemma, I think. If you draw it later, you just put it face up right when you get it, because there's none of these tracks are going to trigger to flip it up. And I don't know if powerful is the word, but it's certainly game changing. They are, so yeah, maybe they're stronger in general. Like this one here, Dava the Shredder. I hope I'm saying that correctly. When you use a tunnel without bumping a worker, you do not pay the tunnel cost. So in a lower player game, that can be a really big deal, because maybe, the tunnels are a lot more open and available. And then if they're open and available, then they're free for you. That's a really big deal. But in a 6-player game, obviously that probably isn't going to be as big of a deal. This guy here, when you use a tunnel, you may always gain both the resource and the card. So again, and maybe they're better earlier on. And I was kind of almost thinking, like, maybe you want to deal everybody, like let's say there's 6, so everybody in a 6-player game, everybody could have 1. So maybe when you're dealing the 4 recruits, whatever, that you pick. Since there are 6 factions, I was thinking maybe you want to actually just deal 1 to everybody at the beginning of the game. I'm not saying that somebody would have an unfair advantage in having these per se, but they definitely will have a more interesting game. And again, maybe you get dealt 4 at the beginning and you only keep 2. Okay, maybe they choose not to keep the factionless recruit. But they are definitely game changers. Like they make the game pretty different. So maybe then for your very first game, if you're teaching people, choose not to use these or something. There was one that I will here, Kofi the Hermit. This one is you start with 1 worker and can't get more. When you retrieve for free, take a new turn. When a recruit activation space is reached on a tunnel or allegiance track, you discard Koif and activate one of your recruits. So you do kind of start at a bit of a disadvantage there almost, because you only have 1 die. You can't place the 2. So you can never do that thing where if you roll doubles or something, you can pay a heart and you get to put both of those guys out there. But then you never have a turn where you just pull people back. Because on a turn when you do pull people back, only for free, so I guess not every single turn, but when you do pull them back, you can just put them right back out there again. So I guess that's really good. And then in theory, you could kind of use that same space twice. So if, I guess you would bump yourself anyways before, so I guess that's not even that valuable. Well, no, you wouldn't bump yourself in the large spaces, so that's good. But my point with this guy is that I was teaching the game to new players, and I wanted to try out the expansion. So this guy, one of the new players, got this character, and he was like, so how is that going to work? What does it mean when you retrieve for free? Which I guess is another question. I'm assuming when you retrieve for free is when you don't have to pay any cost. Like, let's say you have no hearts and then you pull them back so you don't actually lose any hearts, that kind of thing. But he said, what if somebody bumps me? Is that getting it back for free? Oh, I don't really know. But again, the factionless recruits are more for experienced players is definitely what I would say. Because again, they're just game changers. They take your experience with Euphoria that you have played before, you understand Euphoria, and now you get to do it differently. Overall, how I feel about this expansion is I think it's pretty good. It's not like an essential expansion per se. It's definitely for fans of the game who want to continue to have a better experience. Unless you really feel like you need these minor changes, like you really feel like you need the market board or the stickers to alter this, that could be up to you, because I feel like that's in going the extra mile type of thing. Those are like, hey, we gave you new decks, and maybe that's not that big of a deal to you, but here's a couple extra things. Here's a solo mode, so maybe solo mode is a big deal to you. Here's some bigger resources. Again, this could have just been a really small box with just a couple decks of cards, and that's pretty much it. But they went that extra mile just to tweak the game a little bit, to make it a little bit better. And probably the one thing that I think is the least necessary, except for obviously Automa for me, because that's just not my thing, but that notwithstanding, is I do feel like the player boards are kind of unnecessary. I always like player boards. It's nice that we have, an area for your stars, an area for your commodities and your resources, and it's separated out so that way you can tell that those are different, and then here's where you put your workers. But then the fact that you still keep track of your, knowledge and whatever your hearts. I can't remember what that's called. The fact that you still do it on there is fine. I don't know. It's just weird that now this area of the board is completely empty. I was thinking maybe I could just put all the resources there or something. I don't know. If you're a fan of Euphoria and you want to start adding a lot of variety to the mix, new cards, new buildings and stuff, I'm going to put a purchase link to this game in the description box down below. And hey, while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you'll never be bored.